I'll tell you something I started to notice when I was deep inside the cult. Certain dates seem to carry weight, not because something dramatic always happened on those days, but because of what we believed could happen. March 20th was one of those dates. It always came with a kind of tension, a quiet expectation, a sense that something needed to happen. I remember waking up on days like that, feeling something I couldn't quite explain. Nothing had gone wrong, but inside there was pressure. It felt like something needed to be done, something needed to be aligned, or the day would pass and I'd miss an opportunity. That's the language we used. Breakthrough, access, open doors. The idea was simple, but it had a strong hold. If you didn't act the right way at the right time, something meant for you could be delayed or even blocked. So people rushed. They tried to fix things spiritually. They overthought their actions. They searched for signs, signals, confirmations. Every small delay started to feel important. Every obstacle felt like proof that something unseen was interfering, and without realizing it, we were creating pressure inside ourselves. That's what I didn't understand back then. Nothing outside had really changed, but inside, everything felt urgent. After I stepped away from that world, I started to see the pattern more clearly. It wasn't the date that had power, it was the expectation we attached to it. When you believe a moment is critical, your perception shifts. Small problems feel like blockage. Silence feels like something is wrong. And that's how the idea of a blocked breakthrough begins. So today, I want to walk through this in a calm, clear way, not from fear, not from superstition, just from understanding. Because what feels like something is blocking you right now might not be what you think at all. One of the strongest ideas I was taught in the occult was that progress can be blocked by unseen forces. At first, that sounds reasonable. Everyone experiences delays. Everyone runs into obstacles. Things don't always move as quickly as we expect. But inside that system, every delay was given a deeper meaning. If something didn't happen on time, it wasn't just a delay, it was interference. If an opportunity didn't open, it wasn't timing, it was resistance. And once you accept that idea, your mindset begins to change. You stop seeing life as a natural process, effort, timing, growth, and you start seeing everything as a hidden battle. Every closed door feels intentional. Every slow moment feels like something is being held back from you. I remember periods where I felt like I was always almost there, like something good was just out of reach, but never quite arriving. And instead of stepping back and looking at practical things, preparation, timing, decisions, I was taught to assume something was blocking me. So I tried harder, but not in a practical way. I tried harder mentally and emotionally. I overanalyzed everything. I became hyper aware. I tried to fix things that weren't actually broken. I spent my energy trying to remove invisible obstacles instead of focusing on visible actions. And that's where the trap is. The idea of a blocked breakthrough keeps your attention on what you can't see instead of what you can control. It creates frustration. You start asking questions like, why isn't this happening? What's stopping me? What am I missing? But those questions don't always bring clarity. Sometimes they just create more confusion because not every delay is a blockage. Sometimes progress takes time. Sometimes growth is happening quietly. Sometimes you're still building the foundation for what you're expecting. But when your mind is trained to see delay as interference, patience becomes difficult. And when patience fades, pressure builds. They never suspect that's exactly what I was experiencing during those important dates. I wasn't being blocked, I was overwhelmed by expectation. And that expectation made everything feel heavier than it really was. Now, this idea came up again and again. Progress can be blocked by unseen forces. It sounds believable at first. Everyone faces delays. Everyone runs into obstacles. Things don't always move as fast as we'd like. But in that system, every delay carried extra meaning. It wasn't just a delay, it was interference. It wasn't just timing, it was resistance. And once you accept that, your whole way of thinking shifts. Life stops looking like a natural process and starts looking like a hidden struggle. Every closed door feels deliberate. Every slow moment feels like something is holding you back. I remember feeling like I was constantly close, like something good was just beyond reach, but never fully arriving. And again, instead of stepping back and looking at practical reasons, I assumed something unseen was blocking me. So I pushed harder in my mind. I overanalyzed. I became overly aware. I tried to fix what wasn't broken. I focused on removing invisible problems instead of taking real action. That's the trap. When you believe in a blocked breakthrough, your attention shifts away from what you can actually do. It keeps you focused on what you can't see. And that creates frustration. You start asking why nothing is happening, what's stopping you, what you're missing. But those questions don't always lead anywhere useful. Sometimes they just lead to more confusion. Because the truth is, not every delay means something is wrong. Sometimes progress takes time. Sometimes growth is happening quietly in the background. Sometimes you're still laying the groundwork for what you want. But when you've trained your mind to see delay as interference, patience becomes hard, and impatience brings pressure. That's what those important dates were doing to me. I wasn't being blocked, I was reacting to expectation. And that expectation made everything feel heavier than it really was. What I eventually came to understand is that expectation can create the illusion of resistance. When you strongly believe something should happen on a certain day, your mind locks onto results. You stop moving naturally. You start watching everything closely. You measure every moment against what you expected. That and that changes how you experience the day. I remember times when I believed a breakthrough was scheduled. I would wake up alert, almost tense, waiting for something to shift. Every conversation, every opportunity, every delay felt important. If something good happened, I thought, this is it. If nothing happened, I thought, something is wrong. That way of thinking is exhausting because instead of living the day, you're constantly evaluating. It's, and when expectation is high, normal life starts to feel like resistance. A delayed response feels like a block. A quiet day feels like nothing is moving. A small inconvenience feels like interference. But in reality, those things are just part of everyday life. Nothing unusual at all. The pressure comes from the belief that something extraordinary has to happen right now. Inside the occult, this was understood clearly. You didn't need to create real obstacles, you just needed to create expectation. Once expectation was high enough, people would interpret normal experiences as signs of blockage, their own percept. IN would do the work. That's what I had to step away from. Because as long as I believed certain dates carried special pressure, I was always measuring myself against a short window of time. I felt like I was either succeeding or failing based on what happened in that moment. And that's not stability, that's emotional fluctuation. Real progress doesn't usually show up all at once. It builds slowly, quietly, and consistently. But when your attention is fixed on a single day, you miss that process. You overlook the small steps that actually create long term results. And then you feel stuck, not because you truly are, but because your expectation have narrowed your perspective. Once I understood that, the feeling of resistance started to fade, not because everything changed overnight, but because I stopped assigning meaning to every moment. The hardest part came after that. When I stopped blaming unseen blockages, I had to face something more honest. Sometimes what feels like blockage is really a lack of clarity, consistency, or direction. It's not dramatic, but it's real. There were times I felt like nothing was moving in my life. Opportunities weren't opening. Progress felt slow. My first instinct, based on what I had learned, was to think something outside was holding me back. But when I stepped back and looked carefully, I saw something different. There were areas where I wasn't consistent. There were decisions I kept delaying. There were decisions I needed to learn but hadn't focused on. In other words, the issue wasn't outside of me, it was in my approach. That realization isn't comfortable. It takes away the mystery, it takes away the drama, but it gives you something much more useful: control. Because if something outside you is responsible for everything, you feel helpless. But if your progress depends on your actions, your focus, and your consistency, then you see and do something about it. And that's where real breakthrough begins. Not on a specific date, not in a perfect moment, but in daily alignment. Small decisions repeated over time. I started asking better questions, not what is blocking me, but what can I improve today? Not why nothing is happening, but what action can I take right now? Those questions grounded me. They brought me out of speculation and back into something real, because most progress is quiet. It doesn't always feel dramatic, it doesn't always show results right away, but it builds over time. When you focus on what you can control instead of what you can't see, things begin to shift naturally. Clarity replaces confusion, action replaces frustration, momentum replaces that feeling of being stuck. That's the difference between living under pressure and moving with purpose. And once I understood that, the idea of being blocked started to lose its hold on me. So, if you feel like something is blocking your breakthrough right now, here's the truth. Don't panic. Don't rush into pressure. Don't assume something invisible is working against you. Pause. Because how you respond in this moment matters more than the feeling itself. I remember when this really changed for me. It wasn't during a ritual, it wasn't on a special date. It was a quiet realization that I didn't need to chase a breakthrough. I needed to steady my thinking. Instead of reacting, I slowed down. That's the first step. Slow your mind down. When you feel urgency, your thoughts scatter. You jump from one idea to another, trying to fix something you can clearly define. That creates confusion. So step back, breathe, give yourself space to think clearly again. Then focus on what's real. What can you actually do today? Not tomorrow, not in theory, but today. Maybe it's finishing something you've been putting off. Maybe it's organizing your priority. Says maybe it's learning something that moves you forward. These are simple actions, but they create momentum. And momentum breaks that feeling of being stuck. Next, release the pressure of timing. Not everything has to happen right away. Progress isn't always visible in a single day. Sometimes what looks like nothing is actually preparation. If you keep forcing everything into a timeline, you'll always feel behind. But when you let progress build naturally, the pressure starts to lift. And when pressure lifts, your thinking becomes clearer. Then focus on consistency, not intensity. You don't need one perfect day. You need steady action over time. That's what produces real results. When I look back, what I used to call blockage was often just impatience mixed with unclear direction. Once I let go of that, things became simpler, not instantly easy, but clearer. And clarity changes everything because when you're clear, you stop guessing. When you stop guessing, you stop feeling stuck. And when you stop feeling stuck, you start moving again. So, if today feels heavy, if it feels like something is being held back, don't look for hidden interference. Look for your next step. Take it calmly, take it clearly, and let that be enough for now. Because real breakthrough doesn't come from pressure, it comes from steady, grounded progress, one step at a. In the end, what I've come to understand is pretty simple. What feels like blockage often isn't something unseen working against you. More often, it's pressure, expectation, or a lack of clarity shaping how you see things. When you let go of that pressure and focus on steady, practical action, things begin to move in a natural way. Progress doesn't need a perfect moment or a specific date. It builds quietly, one step at a time, through consistency and clear thinking. If this helped you see things a little differently, I'd appreciate you subscribing and staying with me for more conversations like this. And thank you sincerely for taking the time to listen.